I know it narrows opportunities because I know there are coaches out there that won't have any black people on their team. And before I even went overseas, um, some of the players that I know that played overseas, they were saying like, yeah, don't go to this place because country's racist and they're racist coaches and all that kind of stuff. So you're not going to have as many opportunities right away just because you're black.
The revolution will not be televised. It'll be broadcasted live on a Netflix reality TV show starring you, me, and the who ain't even paying a subscription. Welcome.
And we're back again with Motivate. Today we have the pleasure of bringing on a very good friend of mine, a gentleman I coached at the University of Charleston that became a younger brother to me in a way. He's played on my adult team. He's played professional now in his second year. His first year was in Finland. And today's episode is actually going to be over him playing in Finland, about his experience of being black and being overseas. He had an incident that happened while he was out there that kind of put a shake to some people. And it kind of shows you that we're not really liked here in America, and we're not necessarily liked overseas either. So where the hell are we liked? His name is Eugene Stuart. This is my boy. So I'll let Gene take over here and introduce himself and kind of give you guys the briefing of what we'll be talking about today.
Thank you, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here at Shop Talk, reporting to you live all the way from Galat, Romania. My name is Eugene Stuart. I am a professional volleyball player from Nassau, Bahamas. I'm currently playing with the club Arcada Galat, and right now we are the defending champs of the Romanian League. So it's a pleasure to be here in my second season. It's also a pleasure to share in this experience with everyone, to let them know that, you know, some instances happen with Black people in their own countries and some happen with them overseas as well. So it's definitely a pleasure to be here. Thankful for Larry for giving me this opportunity, and let's get this show rocking.
So, Gene, give us a little backing of what happened when you were in Finland playing. Kind of give us that story and take us down that journey of everything that transpired.
All right, for sure. It's been a while since I even thought about this, but Larry and I did it. But all right. So as you all know, I played. Not professional. I played collegiate volleyball at the University of Charleston for 4 years. I had the pleasure of meeting Larry in my 4th year, and so I definitely gained a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge, a lot of teachings from this guy. Although he literally scared me sometimes, but it's definitely a pleasure getting to know him. And so we kept in contact as I went overseas in Finland for my first season. You know, just updating him on how things are going, how practices are, how weightlifting sessions have been, how I take my MWF seriously, yada. You get the point. So, my first preseason tournament came along, and it was in the country of Latvia, where my head coach at the time was from. Mind you, I took geography in college and in high school, and I couldn't tell you where the hell Latvia even is, right? So we go there, we're done with the tournament, and we're celebrating, me and a couple of my teammates, we go to the bar, we're drinking shots, we're getting drunk, blah, blah, blah. So now my teammates, they go outside, to do what they got to do. And I'm standing at the bar getting another drink. So, I'm dancing and vibing, and I'm chilling. And I look to the right of me, and there's this guy who I thought was one of my teammates. So I'm just dancing, and I look at him, and he looks at me. And so I look at him like, okay, bro, this is really awkward. So let me look away, right? So then I look back at the guy, and the guy spits in my face. Like literally spits in my face, right? So I'm not very violent, but I had to defend myself. I sucker punched the hell out of this guy, right? Got into a big bar fight in the country of Latvia, right? I promise you, I couldn't tell you the difference between Lithuania and Latvia and all those other Anias, right? But I was there getting a bar fight, right? And so it definitely felt like, like what the actual fuck is happening. I'm sorry for my explicit language, but now that I think about it, it's like it's something that definitely goes to show that some people aren't even educated on why Black people can travel. I didn't spend my whole life being in the Bahamas trying to make a better life for myself in the future to go to Latvia to get spit on. You know, so after this bar fight happens, all my teammates they come to me, they say, "Well, bro, like, why didn't you ask for help and why did you leave us behind and blah blah blah." And this is when I realized, okay, some teams even aren't together and well knit because as your black teammate, why would you leave me in a bar that I have no idea of where I am? So that's where I came to this agreement with myself that hey, I gotta have some form of solitude. I gotta understand that I'm a black man playing overseas. I gotta do what I gotta do to make sure that my life is taken care of because I know that my family isn't with me. I know that I have not that much responsibilities in my life at a young age, but at the same time I have to take care of myself. And so that whole experience just put I don't know, it made my dreams kind of crush at the time. But then I said, okay, I can't just let it go because it's my first season. I said maybe it'll get better in my second, and lo and behold, it got better. But I still relive the memory of this night probably every couple of days, and unfortunately, I had to rant about it. I'm sorry, but I'm glad to get it out and to share that experience. But it was a lot to deal with at the time, and I just, yeah, it was a lot. Back to you, Larry.
Gene, did you feel as if you had teammates that could back you or that you could speak to just about the situation of what happened? Or did you feel isolated at that time now and kind of makes you a little paranoid going into playing professional overseas in each place and it makes you a little more um, weary of the locations you get job offers from to continue your career to play pro? Does that kind of deter you from wanting to continue at all?
Um, well, I definitely have more of a cautious mindset. In Finland, I had about two or three teammates that I could say were my friends, or I could hang out with them and I could put my trust in them. And if I go down in the fight, I know they'll help me. So I definitely have a certain level of respect for some of my Finnish teammates. There was also an American guy that I was with. And so those three definitely set the tone for okay, these are the kinds of people I want on my side or whatever. So whenever I get offers from my agent, I'm always cautious of okay, I don't want to go to countries in like the Middle East or countries from the Eastern European countryside, like because I know for the fact that they're uneducated on how us colored black people travel. They don't understand that we can travel and that we're not just stuck in the confines of our little countries, or in the confines of our little states and whatever. So I have more of, like I said, a conscious mindset of where I want to play. And sometimes I get deterred from wanting to play, but then I can't let my dream die because this is something that I want to continue with for at least 5 or 10 years, down the line.
Josh, you're our other guy who's played professional overseas. Can you touch a little on how it was for you while you played and go into that?
Yeah, so I played overseas for 4 years. I played in Finland as well, but Finland was my last season playing overseas. I played in Abu Dhabi, which is the same. It's in the United Arab Emirates, which is the same country that Dubai is in. That was my first season overseas. I played in Greece, in Athens, with Panathinaikos, and I played in Denmark. And like I said, I played in Finland. And all of those different places were very unique as far as um, my situations in volleyball on and off the court. Um, but obviously, the first eye open I really had was my first year playing overseas, and I was that was the first time I was on the team where it was mostly black people, being on a team in Abu Dhabi. Um, but the culture was completely different. You can just imagine just growing up and money not really ever being an issue. The Emiratis, that's how they live their life. The highest mortality rate they have in the country is for car accidents because they're speeding so much. That's literally how they die the most. There's no alcohol in the country. The only place you can actually get it is at hotels where obviously most of the workers come. So it's broken up into three different classes: the lower class, which is Indian people, and then the middle class, which is us workers that they bring in, and then the upper class, which is the actual Emiratis that are there. And while I was on that team in particular, had a very interesting experience when we traveled to Egypt. We got to play in Egypt. My coach was Egyptian as well. And I just remember when I was there, I had this really weird feeling that some guy was staring at me, and I was with another American at the time when we were just at a quick like place we could grab food to go. And when I was with my other teammate and my teammates, they said that you got to be careful around here. Not everybody, people can tell you're American. So even though they're all black, people could tell I was American, obviously. But they said that because of the way that African Americans are viewed in Africa, it can be a little bit different, a little bit skewed to the fact that they don't respect you as much as a man because your ancestors basically got on the slave ships and became slaves and all that kind of stuff. So that was a big shock for me just hearing that. And obviously the dynamic, that's why I felt so weird being there, even though I was around a bunch of black people. So like you were saying to open the show, if we're not liked there, where are we liked, right? And it just comes down to, and it just comes down to that moment in which you just got to realize that you always kind of have to look out for yourself, regardless of where you go. And that kind of obviously kind of helped me navigate the rest of my professional career as far as where I was playing too. But even when I got up to Denmark, one of the more racist things that happened was once again, alcohol was involved. It was a Christmas party that we all were at. This team that was on was doing historically great. We were undefeated. We ended up actually winning the championship that year and being undefeated in the league. But my coach, he would get hammered drunk. And when he got hammered drunk, he started saying things he shouldn't say. So we're just talking, like he's a happy drunk, I would say that. It wasn't angry drunk, but we were just talking, and the next thing you know, he's calling me the N-word, like straight up. And I'm sitting back because once again, this is an authority figure. I know he's kind of ignorant because he just hasn't been around black people. If you've been in Nordic countries, you just know there are just not that many black people to grow up and be around. So there's a balance in which you kind of have to understand the difference between, okay, is this person being racist? Or is this person being ignorant? Or if this person just doesn't know what they're even saying or the impact that it has. So how I handled that situation was actually different than how my teammate at the time, Connor Eaton, who played at Long Beach State, handled it. He was a lot more pissed off than I was, which it tells you everything you need to know about Connor. But it's just one of those things in which there's racism. You just don't know when it's going to show up and how it's going to show up and how you're going to handle it when it does, right? And it's not just racism against black people there. I mean, there was a person on the team who was straight up racist against Jewish people too. And to the fact that once again, when he was drunk, he would say things that he loved Hitler and he loved everything that he stood for. So we have our problems in America, but trust me, there are a lot of problems everywhere. And it comes off, especially as Americans, of just kind of being young because our country is so young, relatively speaking. But these are countries that have been around for a long time and done through a lot of things, and they come off more arrogant in that way because they've said they've been there, done that. But there's a long way for them to go.
Josh, I mean, you have more experience than Gene does right now. Do you feel as a black male then when you get out of college playing, right? Like every kid has a dream to continue playing professional and they want to go overseas to play professional. Do you feel that now will make less opportunities for a gentleman of darker skin to be able to find a job compared to our white counterparts? So it's more often that the black players will go play for maybe a year or so and then stop because of dealing with something either you or Gene have dealt with. And I mean, there are people who've told me they've dealt with nothing like that. They've had no experience of racism while playing overseas. But do you feel that kind of narrows the opportunities for a black male playing?
I know it narrows opportunities because I know there are coaches out there that won't have any black people on their team. And before I even went overseas, some players that I know that played overseas, they were saying like, yeah, don't go to this place because country's racist and they're racist coaches and all that kind of stuff. So you're not going to have as many opportunities right away just because you're black. Me being an undersized black player, I had even less opportunities, but I could score. So when it came down to it, it's like, okay, well, if you know you can score, you're still gonna get opportunities. But when you go through those experiences, it's not like any other experience that you experience in the U.S. What are you gonna do? Just gonna stop? You're gonna stop doing something that you love just because there are bad people out there? It's like, no, you're gonna try to make the most opportunities, and you're gonna put yourself in situations where you feel that you can be successful despite the circumstance, right? So like I said, the issue is like it's out there, you just don't know when it's gonna rear its ugly head, and then how you're gonna handle in that moment, just depending. One way I handled it once again was just making sure I was on a team with more foreigners. My first year I played overseas, I was the only foreigner on the team. So going forward, it's like, okay, let me make sure there's some other foreigners that are on the team, so I know it's not just me that's from a different country. There are other people that are different country as well. And then when I'm going out, I'm always with my teammates. There's never a time where I'm going and I'm venturing on by myself. That every time I go out, I'm with my teammates, and that way, if I need somebody to help translate or something else goes down, then I'm more prepared for that situation as well.
I coached the Team USA at the World University Games in Napoli, Italy, back in 2019, and listening to those stories, both from Eugene and Josh. And Josh was not just, by the way, a point scorer. He was a hell of a volleyball player. So I wish you would say that, I suppose. And I was late to the game watching Josh play. It doesn't surprise me. When we went to Italy in the summer of 2019, actually one of your guests upcoming, Jalen Jasper, was on that team. So it'll be really interesting to hear his experience there. I had an amazing time. We went into Dublin, Ireland first, and I'm not so sure that Dublin, Ireland wasn't better than Italy, to be quite frank with you. But one of the things that I did notice, and Europe has been going through a national identity crisis, which encompasses race, by the way, but they have a different national identity protection clause per countries than the United States of America does with its racial reckoning. I had a great experience in Italy, but I knew, being the head coach, and my assistant coach was Iranian, who was living in America. I knew that we had eyes on us. But for the most part, all of our experiences, he and I, we shared a room together. Obviously, we ate together. We did a lot of stuff together. We did not have, thankfully, any horrid racial experiences, but we both knew, because of our position. And I think and what Josh talks about is 100% true in regards to this class system that's overseas. Because we were, I guess, staff members or in a prestigious role, people looked at us perhaps in a different light over in Italy, that we were treated with respect. All the dignitaries that we encountered had nothing but positive things to say about the way we conducted ourselves and our team. It would be really interesting, of course, to hear Jalen talk, because Jalen obviously is a player, being in the player village, the players' village, with the other young individuals from all different parts of the globe. I wonder what his experience is. But it does not surprise me one bit as Europe goes through, and you see it a lot in soccer. I think obviously it's a disgrace that somebody's on a dance floor and they spit in the face of Eugene. I think that's not only despicable. I'm amazed he only got one punch in, given the circumstances. You see it a lot in football over there. The racial epithets that are thrown at black players from different cultures. It is not better over there, and they've been around a lot longer. And I know we touched about it in our last podcast too. The education part. I mean, it's very disturbing to hear that the teammate from Josh saying that he admired Hitler and those things. It's interesting because if you were to talk to a lot of individuals from Europe, and I have a lot of European friends. I've only been to Europe one time, and that was in 2019. I was hoping to go back this past summer, hopefully next summer. Is that there are a lot of skeletons still in the closet there when it comes to racial and national reckonings. And as much as those countries have been around, they've also experienced a lot. And the Reformation after World War II for a lot of those countries, it still plays its part. And when I was in Italy and we got a chance to go see the ruins in Pompeii and go to other places and talking to some of the locals, Italy was once a fascist country. In some parts, some people over there believe it still exists. It's interesting to listen to the younger version, because this is what hit me with Josh's conversation about the class. It's interesting to hear the younger people talk, because the younger people, at least again, this is just my experience, they didn't care. They didn't care where you're from, who you are, what you're at. But when you get the older crowd, the middle age to the upper older crowd, they care because it's part of their experience growing up in life.
I think that Josh and Rock hit it pretty good with it's a little different in Europe. You know, when I played with Sandhausen, Germany over there internationally, I didn't really experience a lot of the country being racist more than just individuals being racist against not just you because you're black, but because you're a black American. They're more discriminatory on the fact that you are an American or you are not, let's say, European. You get what I'm saying? You're not European, so you're an outsider from their country, and they definitely let you know that you're an outsider from their country. You know, depending on how long you were on their team, they kind of kept you in a box over here with the rest of the team over here. Unless you're like Josh was saying, this 6'7" God and you played out of the box, they're not going to give you the respect that you feel you deserve. And I'm not surprised that happened with alcohol. They get very brave, very crazy once alcohol is in the system. That's a normal thing for them. You know, being in Germany, I had a lot of cultural differences to overcome, simple things that I didn't think anything about at the time. But when you look at it, it's like, wow. For instance, workers in Germany, they get 2 beer breaks. Now, I'm not talking your little bottle of beer. I'm talking a beer gallon. They can drink up to a liter of beer on 2 breaks while they're working. We're talking about guys who are up on scaffolds, doing streets. So if he's got 2 of those in him before he gets off work, can you imagine what he's going to say to you? You know, I mean, and then you don't have the racial policies in place as far as their government. Like here in the U.S., you discriminate, you have a right to discriminate, believe it or not. But I also have a right to sue you. So I did real estate for a few years, and you can discriminate selling your house, but just know people can sue you for being discriminatory in housing. They don't have that in the other countries. I remember flying to Turkey, and the first thing that happens when you are on a plane and enter Turkish airspace, they say, at this time, we would like to let you know that you've just entered Turkish airspace and you have no rights as a citizen in Turkish air if you are an American or from national. I'm like, what? What? I have no what? Are you kidding me? You're going to kill me and I have no, there's nothing you can say. And if you watch the movie, what is that? Carl probably know, you know, Rock, you might be right there too. Midnight Express. Is that the one where they got the guy in Turkey? Man, they lost that guy for some weed. Can you imagine we were just talking about the people who were in the Cayman Islands, right, Josh? The couple, they go to Cayman Islands, they violate the rules over there for COVID. They're going to jail for 5 months. Whoop. That wouldn't happen in the U.S. because I have rights, but you don't have rights over there. So, yes, they're going to discriminate because you're black, because you stand out. You can't hide the fact that you're black. And as soon as you speak, they know you're American. And some of these countries or people in those countries despise Americans. And I got the Hitler thing, Josh, and I said, oh, I can go home and Hitler can come back. Hey, I'm more than welcome to go home. I don't want to protect the border anyway, so I'm good with that. And the lady was like, oh, no, no, no. Oh, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. You really don't want Hitler back. So, I mean, they just say stupid stuff to try to hurt you or get a rise out of you because some of them really, I was telling Larry last night, France is a big gateway for Africans, coming through the country. And a lot of those provinces that way can't stand people of color. It's just like an upper class African American in America takes a hit for an African American who's ignorant and lives in the hood and doesn't want to convert. So he's really ignorant, but you have the person who's educated, who's gone to school, has a degree, he still takes the same hit as this guy does. So one person of color can ruin it for every person of color, because you have to remember, how many black people did you see, Josh, the time you were playing rock when you were coaching? How many African Americans did you see? Almost as limited people of color as in USA volleyball.
Very few, Ed, very few.
Very. So you got to remember their encounters with African Americans are limited to begin with. But spitting in my face, no, Eugene, I don't care if you were drunk or I'm going to knock you out. Yeah, I couldn't have did it.
So, G, our group talked about this black box, what it means to be black, and what you have to be considered or do to be considered black. So I guess my question for you is, did you feel like you could talk to anybody about this, or was this something that you just ended up bottling up and shoving deep down as far as you could to not have to deal with it anymore? Or is it something you tried to use to help better yourself further on, or help others like you, right, that are looking for the same opportunity? Did you use any of that to help, or did you kind of just take it and like, I'm not talking about it because it's too painful of a subject to talk about? Because I know, like you said, when we first started, it's been a while since you've talked about this, right? And it's something you and I was able to have a great conversation with for about an hour after so it happened. And I know you confided in me a good amount about certain things that you wouldn't with normal people. So is this something that you openly talk about with people, or is it something you kind of try to forget about as much as possible?
Well, both sides of it. So, like I said, it's very traumatizing to think about all the time. So I try to let it sit in the back of my mind. But also, I try to talk to my parents about it. I had a therapist. I talked to him about it. And while I got here, like when I first got here in Romania, I talked to a few of my teammates about it so that they're aware of the situation. So that they just don't think like, hey, I'm a gypsy or whatever. Or I don't have some kind of documentation for myself. Like, hey, I'm a proud black man from the Bahamas, traveling to play in my second season. I need y'all to know that these kinds of circumstances happen to people like us, so that y'all are aware of it, and so that y'all can also make yourselves educated of it as well, And so, like I said, it's something that I try not to think about too much, because just the thought of someone being so ignorant, taking their spit and putting it on someone else's face, that's like the bottom of the barrel of lows. That places me next to a rat. I'm not even human anymore, and that's why I try not to think about it, because that makes me feel like I have no dignity and I can't travel anywhere as free as I want to, and the thing about it is that's the harsh reality of it. Because me being a black man here, even in Romania, I get considered to be a gypsy person or whatever. A gypsy is what they consider someone who doesn't even have documentation, or they just travel around and just lay their eggs essentially and just move around without a care. And I can't be under the same umbrella of these people because I am not these people. But the harsh reality is I am under the same umbrella, which sucks to put in lack of better words. But at the same time, it's something that I have to go through. And so you can't escape these things. You have to go through it whether you like it or not. And so that's the downside of wanting to play and have this dream of playing overseas, you have to deal with these circumstances because some people just aren't educated on the whole topic of Black people being able to travel and them not being in the black box that we always mention. And so it's definitely a hard seesaw of decisions to make, but you have to make the right one for yourself. And so I've decided to continue on the best way I could. So trying to educate my teammates as well as trying not to keep the feeling inside. So it's been a lot to deal with.
Eugene, I have a question, and it's kind of a follow up to what you were just talking about. Um, do you have an agent currently, or did you have an agent? And if so, did that agent also talk to the team about what occurred in your previous stop?
So yes, Carl, I do have an agent. Currently, he represents me from the country of Greece, and he also has a few other good players in the agency as well. Um, we did speak about this problem. I told him about it, and the sucky part about it is that he did what I did and swept it under the rug. I had asked him. I said, "Well, hey, let's look for other teams." And he said, "Okay, I'm proposing you to this team, to that team." And so I just said, "Well, have you heard any updates from any of these teams?" And so it's been oh, I'll get back to you, or oh, I'm dealing with other clients. So as of right now, my agent hasn't done that much of a good job to help me with. But at the same time, he has put me here in this better situation for this season, which I was so grateful. But at the same time, what was done during the present time was very unhelpful. And yes, another question for you, Carl.
Yeah, and then my follow up would be, and hopefully I don't step on somebody else that's going to ask something like this, but since you played, you came from the West Indies to the States to play volleyball, get an education, and now you move on to the next step and go to another continent to do the same thing. What what piece of advice would you give to somebody that's following your footsteps? Another young Black male, be it from America, be it from Canada, be it from the West Indies, wherever, to try and avoid the pitfalls that you may have undergone.
Okay, well, this is the first time I've ever given serious advice, so I hope that it helps. But on a serious note, I am a spiritual guy. I am Catholic, so to any young man or young lady that wants to play overseas, I say put God first. Whenever you feel down, whenever you feel the lows, you pray. Whenever you feel the highs, the ups, you still pray. Put God first and have faith. Uh, appreciate any support that you get from anybody, regardless of who it is. It could be family, it could be friends, it could be a person you just met on social media. Appreciate the support. Be humble, be coachable. Every day you can learn something regardless of your age. Like presently on my team, we have an age range from 24 to 37, and we all teach each other stuff from the youngest guy to the oldest guy. So everyone learns something new. And then another thing is just be able to adapt to anything. Changes occur every day between anybody, and so you have to have that accountability for yourself to be able to change and to be able to move whenever you can move. And so that's the best advice that I could give, and I hope that it's helpful to somebody one day.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on some of the stuff that was mentioned, especially about the black box. In general, obviously going overseas and playing professionally, I was around people that had literally never been around Black people ever in their lives, barely spoke English in some cases. And so realizing that what they have seen on TV of Black people is exactly what they think all Black people are, right? So Abu Dhabi, they were obsessed with Western culture. They were obviously like Kim Kardashian, everything. They were super popular over there. Like that's what that they see that, and then say, okay, yeah, you want to kind of be like, there's good parts of our culture that you want to you want to be a part of and you want to represent, and then there's parts you don't really want to represent too, right? But that's something that you realize pretty quick when you get over there, that some people have never really been around Black people, so all they have seen is what they see on TV, and they bring up those references like you guys have put in the chat with Will Smith and Fresh Prince of Bel Air and all that kind of stuff. Another thing, so that kind of heightens the intensity of that black box and trying to make sure you kind of knock down some of those stereotypes when they're not true, right? You want to make sure they understand who you are. The part about agents in general, agents, especially playing overseas, is not like Jerry Maguire. It's not like they're doing everything you can. It's not all about you. These agents that work for volleyball, they are more affiliated with the teams because the teams represent more income for them. They can get a player, but the more teams they're associated with, the more transactions they can get. So let's say you go on a team and then something doesn't work out, you end up getting cut for whatever reason. They get paid again to be able to bring in another player. And it's kind of up to the team and the agent to see how good that relationship is over time. But in my experience, the agent was always more affiliated with the clubs than they were for myself and specifically. And once again, that's just kind of like they don't get paid unless usually you get onto a team. And then the last part that I wanted to mention is that it seems like just being a black man and traveling, that we just have to educate ourselves so much more than other people. When it comes to going to other countries and like, okay, how am I going to be treated here, or what situation is going to come up? I don't know if other cultures have to really deal with this as much as we do, but it seems like I have to do research every single time I'm traveling to kind of gauge how things could end up or how things could be. Volleyball has taken me all over the world. I haven't been south of the equator yet, but not only have I been to the places I mentioned, but I've also been to Lebanon. I've been to Japan. So it's been very different in all these different places I've gone. And as far as what you can do to those players that are coming up and want those opportunities, you just have to continue to educate yourself and then put yourself in a position to be able to respond in the best way possible to make sure that you have the best experience, right? That you can't just leave it up to chance when you go in these places. Just like you go into a game and you have a scouting report, you got to have the same thing just going through life as a black man, especially when you're traveling and going to places that you don't know about. You can't just go in there blinded. You gotta have a game plan when you do it.
I'm curious for you, Josh, with your experience and junior experience going overseas, because I'm presuming here, and I'm safely presuming that obviously you had racial incidents prior to your departure to go to Europe to play. Did you? And you touched on it, Josh, in terms of as you talk, I think back to my time when I went to Ireland, and I think one of the first things that I said to myself was, I wonder if they ever encountered a black person over here in Ireland. But they were all wonderful and nice, again, to me. Did you, prior to, is it naivety on your part to say to yourself, hey, I'm going overseas, that I expect everything to be kosher? Or did you ever have it prior? This is prior to you departing to go overseas and play overseas. Or did you tell yourself, hey, I may have to prepare for what might happen in this circumstance? And I don't know what it's like to go overseas. I don't know if you have that conversation with an agent, with your team, with your team managers or whomever, to say, hey, am I the only black person on the team? How do they affect? So I'm just curious to know both of your guys' take prior to going over to play professionally.
I'll go first. For me, it was okay. I'm going to my first contract. It happened really fast. It happened relatively late summer. I ended up having to travel. I found like early August I was going to go to Abu Dhabi, and then I was going to travel by the end of the month. So I really only had a few weeks to get ready once I realized where I was going. But my mom was worried I was going to the Middle East to play volleyball. So I think that just kind of set the tone for every time I went overseas, because, okay, regardless of for the same reasons people have biases against us, we have biases against other people, right? In the Middle East and everything you see on TV that happens over there, regardless of it's in the UAE, which is a country in which a lot of that stuff doesn't really happen. The police officers don't even carry guns over there, for crying out loud. But it's like, okay, I'm going to the Middle East. What is something I couldn't encounter? My coach was Egyptian. He was black. like I said, the team I was going to had more black people on it than I had ever been on. So, and they were, because they were Emiratis, they were in a different class than most of the people that was around. So that was very interesting for me to see, that you had black people that were in such a high class compared to other groups of people, higher than me, higher than obviously the Indians that were there as well. So but because of my first season going overseas, I kind of just by defaulted kind of did my research every single time I went overseas to kind of see what I would encounter, just because of what happened where I was in going my first year.
Well, for me, like I said, this is only my second season of playing. So obviously, after graduating, I definitely got excited to play. I signed with my agent in March, and so I was like, okay, I'm ready to work. I'm ready to find a job overseas. I'm going to Europe, blah blah blah. Excitement, stars everywhere. So I was just ready to go, ready. I was hyped, and so I got, kind of disappointed when my agent couldn't find me a job until maybe the middle of July. He came to me with some offers, low offers and very terrible offers, and so I had to, straighten them out and tell them, well, hey, listen, man, like I'm really trying to play. I'm trying to find some excitement about playing volleyball, this, that. And so he definitely gave me the runaround, but he was able to find me this club in Finland. And so I had done my research on the country itself, to gain a few facts for myself. And, it was good to know for myself what I was going to encounter in Finland. I didn't think that there would have been any racial problems. People there are really nice. And so I found it upon myself to not ask my agent this season about Romania. I just said, okay, I'll educate myself because, what I learned from you guys as well tonight, apart from you guys, I learned that, some agents are very selfish in what they tell each of the players. And so obviously, I know that my agent isn't going to care for anything else other than me finding a contract and me playing and me getting money and stuff like that. So I decided upon myself to just make sure that I'm educated as a black man, a young black man at that, and to be ready for anything that happens in any circumstance.
So to give a little context to our listeners on things is I want to touch on something Josh said, which was one, the most overseas, they're getting a reference of what a black man looks like or acts like from movies and TV shows. But it's not even up to date movies and TV shows. It's old. They're behind us by so many years that they're looking at stuff maybe from the 90s to where in those films, black people are only portrayed as thugs, poor, drug addicts, alcoholics. That's what they get to see of us. They don't see the new updated versions now to where black people are more than just this downgraded person in a film. So their view of us is more than likely negative because of the generation of what they're getting and the years it was given. And Carl gave a great point. New Jack City. It's one of my favorite movies, but that gives you a great example of pimps, whores, and drugs is what black people are involved with. But the other part I want to touch on from Josh to give a little insight is the traveling as a black man. You have to research before you go anywhere. Well, it's not just overseas. As a black man in the United States, you have to research. If I'm going from Georgia back home to Chicago, well, guess what? I'm going through Georgia, Tennessee, Indiana, then I'm in Illinois. Well, guess what? Majority of my trip is very dangerous in the small neck of the woods areas, which is a lot of the time. You're usually fine in the bigger cities, but I have to plan my day to leave and travel when there's daylight so I can see somebody or see if somebody is following me or to know if I'm in any type of danger, which is, I've always thought about this, and I don't know if it's a real thing, but I think it would be awesome if it was, is a black GPS that tells you this is where you're going. Awesome. Don't go here. Don't go there. This is the route you need to take for you to be safe. It's almost like an underground railroad GPS is what it would be in a way. And it's sad to say that because I don't think you really can understand how hard it is to travel anywhere as a black person. But just to give you some insight on it, that's what it's like. Like if I'm trying to go drive anywhere, I have to plan my routes and plan my stops. Like even if I want to stop and get gas, well, if I'm at a quarter of a tank and I know I'm about to run into this next 100 miles and I'm about to get in some treacherous waters, well, I better stop and get gas as soon as I can in an area that's safe. Or I'm gonna stop and get gas and I may not get back on the road, or I might get followed afterwards. So that those are real things that happen. And I've said it before in one of our episodes, I think, that I got off in Ohio somewhere and I got off in Ohio somewhere and it's middle of nowhere. I need to get gas. And I saw Confederate flags everywhere I went as I'm driving up to this gas station. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. If I do, I'm going to have to stop, get out quick, pump gas, get back in the car, and get to moving quick. As I'm pulling up to the gas station, I see one black guy pumping his gas, and he's finishing. And I'm like, okay, I can take kind of a deep breath and relax because I at least saw another black person here that was comfortable enough to be in this area. So it falls into the realm of, as a black person, you get that sigh of relief when you finally get to see someone like you in an area that you don't necessarily feel safe in. It's that familiarity that you get to have. And I kind of want to ask Nikki a question, and that is, I'm not sure how much AVCA can do on this because it's professional and they do nothing with that, but is there any type of educational we can put out there to our kids as college coaches, of educating our college coaches a little bit more maybe, or having some kind of seminar or information on the AVCA page or wherever have you, to kind of keep them informed and help them to better themselves to be ready for those type of situations and circumstances?
On that note, that was a really great question, Larry, and I was thinking about that. I'll answer your question, and I kind of want to piggyback on what you said before. I think there were some questions in the chat. I think, and this is something that I'm working towards right now, and I had a great conversation this morning. We're always looking for young men, women, old men, women, people with experience to give and donate their time. And I say this all the time, and you heard me say it before, of like, who's willing to put in the work with our coaches to educate them, to in turn educate our young athletes. You know, it's something that's in the back of my mind. It's like, how can we do that? Because there does need to be a preparation. I haven't been to Europe. I've been to, Canada and islands and things like that, where it's, fairly resemblant of the United States, but I really want to go. And I am scared out of my mind sometimes. And I was going to go to Germany this past spring. Obviously COVID hit, but I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to be treated. But on that note, I think this is a great opportunity. Listeners out there, if you would love to give back and give your time, give me a holler. Nikki Sandlin, McKendry, you can find me. But I wanted to piggyback on your comments about knowing where you are. Going to school in West Virginia, I live in an area where, on one hand, it's St. Louis, Missouri, urban area, diverse, and then towards the east is farm community. I got a brand new puppy. I had to go to the farms to go get him. My concern was exactly what you said, is I'm looking around to see if there's someone out here that looks like me. And one, again, I'm not a man. Two, there are, how many black females do you know that are driving around alone in a rural area by themselves, getting out, getting gas? That's not even a thought. I went fishing a couple weeks ago in small town Missouri, out in, I likened it to a horror flick. I'm like, this is where people go to die, and I'm out here by myself. And there was a bar that had a handwritten sign on it, and the person I was with was like, I wonder what that's like. I'm like, look, I'm not getting out the car. Don't stop. Don't even make it. Like, no one in this city has ever seen anyone that looks like me. And I'm here to fish. Like, so I can resonate so much with that. And I can only imagine that uncertainty, and obviously doing your research when you're going into a different area. But can you really do that here in America? I was in Newburgh, Missouri. I can't Google Newburgh, Missouri and see the demographic population. It's probably 0%, so keeping a lookout, head on a swivel, educating yourself, not going alone. I'm already twofold of not going alone anywhere by myself anyway as a black female. Now I'm, adding on to that of where am I at? So that's what I got.
Josh, I have a question for you, and this question is coming from all of the young black men playing professional volleyball overseas. So, well, I'm going to ask on behalf of all of them. I want to know, given the opportunity you can play again, what kind of advice that you can give us to look forward to in the future, if these kinds of circumstances happen again? What can we do about it to make sure that, us as the young men playing are protected from these kinds of circumstances happening to us?
Yeah, I think it goes back to just the reason why you're there, right? So obviously going overseas and playing in a different place can be fun and exciting, but you got to know why you're there. Being the professional in everything you do, right? So you have to make it your craft. If you are a top tier volleyball player, you're going to be well liked no matter where you go, right? Because you're going to be around people that love sports. You're going to be around teammates that appreciate the work ethic and all that kind of stuff. So it's. I mean, we were talking about this yesterday, or when we were doing the podcast about the black box and how black people are seen as entertainers in general. But some of the most well-liked athletes we know are people like LeBron James because people respect how hard he works and what he's been about on and off the court, right? So carrying yourself in a good light, trying to put your best foot forward as much as you can, trying to knock down those stereotypes by showing people who you are and what you're about. So that's the advice I would have to give to you, is that you got to make sure that you're there and that you're as focused on being the best player that you can be, showing that, and obviously trying to get those results on the court. And that comes down to obviously the results, making sure you're picking a team that obviously might have a decent chance of winning. That always comes down a little bit more individual based off of the team, the agent, and all that kind of stuff you're working with. But there are obviously some leagues in which the teams that have the highest budget are the ones that are going to win. So making sure that you're on a team that can compete with those teams, or obviously get on one of those better teams, is going to be so much better than just getting into a league and playing on a bottom team. And then if your team isn't winning, then who knows what comes after that, right? So make sure you put yourself in a situation in which you know how the team's success has been, that you can add to that, and then that you can put your best foot forward by showing that you're a world-class athlete, right? That it's not just about going overseas and just kind of hanging out. It's about going overseas and being, if you're not winning the most, that you're among the top of the league statistically in what you're doing, right? And then Ed, you had a question about whether I thought it was more class versus color. In Abu Dhabi, it was definitely more class than color, I would say, and that's because you're around more groups that that, like I said, I've never seen before. They have a ton of money, so how else am I going to tell you that I'm better than you? Right? It's not about the skin color anymore. But going to the other place that I play, obviously more in Europe, it was definitely more about color, because you couldn't go somewhere without someone seeing you, and then depending on where you are, if I'm on the court, I'm getting treated one way. If I'm at a bar or a nightclub, I'm getting treated a different way. If I'm just walking on the street, I'm getting treated another way, right? So it, like I said, it just kind of comes down to where you end up going. And then circling back to the agent thing, like I kind of the agents, like, I can get you a contract that's a decent amount of money. They feel that they've done their job, right? You're not doing more research. So, is this the same place? All that kind of stuff is like Abu Dhabi. I got a nice contract to go play over there, but to me, it ended up not being worth it because the team was not motivated to be great. And there, like I said, it was one foreigner. I had to compete against the other foreigner. If I was not playing better than that player, we lost every single time. And then if I did outplay that player and we actually won, then I did my job. So it's either we lost because of me or I did my job. There was no other kind of valid. We literally averaged 6 people practice. We couldn't have a full practice because that's how much pressure they put on me to make sure that I was going out there and doing my job. So yeah, it could be for agents. It's mostly about the money. It's about the money, and then can I keep this relationship going with the club so I can keep more income coming in. But I don't want to discourage people from wanting to play overseas, but it's very important to know why you're actually doing it. And it's not just there are people, especially in the volleyball world, in which money's not really an issue and they can just go over there and play and have a year away from the country and that kind of stuff. But with us, you got to have a little bit more focus when you're heading over there. It's never about just, it's never for us, it's never just been about the job.
Yeah, I just took a couple notes on that, Josh. And yes, that's what I wanted to make sure people understand. When you go to the Middle East, it's not so much about the color as their economical classes, you know, because that's a place, Nikki, you really got to be careful what you say and do, because women are treated less than all the way at the bottom. If you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, they might stone you or behead you. They are so backdated there, it's ridiculous. So, and it segues into what we were talking about with Josh, to piggyback on what you were saying about Black people seems like we have to do more research on where we go and what we do. Yes, we do. We not only have to do that research, we have to do it based on that time right then, according to what's going on in the world. Because I'm going to give you an example. When I was playing overseas, that when I traveled, I like to use my military ID. I can go anywhere with that. But when I went to certain countries, like when I was telling you about Turkey, I used a passport. You don't want to use a military ID in some places. You've seen the movie Delta Force? When they were on the plane, they were asking for passports, and the guy gave them, he said, "What's this?" He said, "That's my military ID." Or you with the capitalist country scum dogs, alert goes up. You are suspect to be killed on the spot. So yes, as Black men, as Black American men, and then if you're military versus player versus person on the street versus person that's born in the country, it's a different, you just got to know your status. You really have to do your research. And it is more than just anyone else traveling. And I make that claim because I always say that the difference between a Caucasian person or anyone from Europe is they can blend in. I get upset with that with Puerto Ricans. They are probably below us in class when it comes to minority, but they can blend in. We can't peel our skin off. They can spot us from a mile away. That's one of the reasons why I feel we are the most discriminated race, is because we cannot change our colors like a chameleon. There are some Blacks, and Carl, you and Rock will know, you're that old. Yeah, you're that old. There are Black people who are actually look more white than a white person. And they called it passing back in the day. Their hair was straight, their skin was fair, and they literally passed. I mean, my mom was that high yellow. You look at Larry, she was lighter than Larry, and hair straight. She could have walked in a room of white people and they would not have known she was Black. So, yeah. And the last thing I'm gonna piggyback on is Larry with the GPS for Blacks. I 100% concur. What you're talking about, I believe, was in the 60s. It was called the Green Book. There's actually a movie done on it. Yeah. It's called the Green Book, where it shows you all the safe passages through the South. That's crazy. You know, and we're talking about how movie depicts life. I was watching a series called Lovecraft Country. Now, in it, they have this book where you can stop with all this witchcraft, you know, where they have magic. It shows you where, but what it was really saying was this is safe passage for Black people through the South. Green Book. When you have to look at the metaphors that they use in movies, it's not just what you see on the surface. You have to think about what you're seeing and use it, because I have a saying that anytime you see something in the movies, it came from something real life. They didn't just get it out the air. Someone saw something that connected or resonated with them, and they put it in a movie. So it exists somewhere, somehow, maybe not to the same extent, but it exists.
Art imitates life. And I was going to mention the Green Book. That's so ironic that you just said that. Which is a great movie, by the way. And being up here in Canada, it's like the Underground Railroad, the system for freedom for Blacks to leave the United States to come up here to Canada for their salvation. I want to touch on something that Nikki talked about. It's very interesting listening to all of you talk in regards to travel and the cautiousness in which you have described, in particular, Black men traveling overseas. And again, I've only been to Europe the one time, but I've been down. Some of my family's originally from the Caribbean and the West Indies, so not the Bahamas, a little more south, Grenada, Gene, and Trinidad and Tobago. But I've never had an issue with travel. I've never had. But it's very interesting because Nikki and Larry talked about the story in regards to, you know, maybe getting gas or going to a certain place. I was working a USA volleyball camp. I'm not going to mention the city or the state, but I went out to a social gathering, and within this establishment in America was a Confederate flag, and I showed this Confederate flag to a coaching colleague of ours in California. And he said, "Holy hell, I couldn't believe it." And that's in America traveling. And this is one of the most beautiful states, I think, in the United States, one of the most amazing cities in the United States of America. And it exists here as well. And I don't want to damper people from saying, "Oh, Black, you can't travel, you can't do this." It's interesting. Larry tells that story about, you know, getting a gas in perhaps an unsavory place. And in his mind thinking, hey, this may not be for me, but I saw another Black person, and then I kind of lowered my senses a little bit. It's amazing that you still feel that way and people have that senses. That happens to me once in a blue moon too. Not often. I don't think about race often. I really don't. And I'm very fortunate not to. Obviously, the last year and what has transpired over the last 9 months since George Floyd's murder has propelled that to come to the forefront of my mind. But it's interesting about the various experiences we all carry in life as Black individuals, whether it's overseas travel, whether it's within your nation travel, within cities travel. I remember going, and I'll tell this quick story. I remember when I got to Fort Wayne, Indiana, the first time as an undergraduate in August of 1995. I'm a news junkie. And this would have been, I think, the Friday. I got there the Friday before school started on the Monday, and I turned on the news, the 6 p.m. newscast, the NBC affiliate. It was NBC 33 at the time. The lead story there was the Ku Klux Klan had a rally in downtown Fort Wayne. And I remember saying to myself, what in the world did I just get myself into? And I had done research about Indiana, Fort Wayne. I mean, it's only 2.5 hours. It's less than now from Windsor to Fort Wayne. It's close. The people are wonderful. But then this comes on as the lead story on the news. And I just remember going, my goodness gracious, what decade am I living in? And my senses went up. Thankfully, I wasn't the only Black person on the volleyball team and so forth. So I had an outlet in case something disparaging were to occur. But I'm always careful to think about somebody else's experience, and it humbles me. It humbles me to know that I'm luckier than most, for whatever reason, that I haven't had as an adult as many horrifying experiences based on race than others. And the fact that not only can it happen, I know this is primarily for overseas conversation, but to know that a Confederate flag is in a locale in a great part of the United States of America, one of the great states in America, and it's very shocking. And to hear your stories, you guys, and I said this in our last podcast. To me, this is about education, and I want to know how other people are feeling. I want to know what other people are thinking, and to know that you're not alone, because that's the biggest thing, right? This is a communal thing. To know that you're not alone in those feelings or those senses, uh, of perhaps trepidation when you got to get gas, or when you're going to the grocery store, or you're in a parking lot. I remember when I was in Palo Alto, for the championships in '09, '08, whenever they hosted and they won. And I was, what's the term when police not pull you over, but they, it'll come to me, when profiled, racial profiling. When I was racial profiled in Palo Alto, I was obviously taken back. I was outside my hotel, walking on my cell phone, having a conversation with my mom. It's really earth shattering to hear some of these stories, but to know that we still have these feelings some 60 years now after the civil rights movement in the United States of America, and obviously what's going on globally, it's still humbling.
I know how we were just talking about, Pop, you were talking about how movies depict someone's reality. And I'm going to, any chance I get to be a nerd, I'm going to be a nerd, especially when it comes to my comic books. What people don't think about is X-Men was created during the civil rights movement because the mutants were Black people and how they were hated and they weren't allowed to do anything. That's how the X-Men was started. Charles Xavier was Martin Luther King. Magneto was Malcolm X, and how they moved and how they did things. So for all my comic book people and my Marvel fans, well, guess what? You can't be a racist because you see and you feel for these mutants in all these different times. Well, guess what? That's what it's like to be Black. You're different. You can't get a job here. You can't come in here to eat. And I'm so thankful, just as always, for you guys being on here and Gene even just taking the time to join us. It's been a true honor, because I feel, I mean, me and Carl said this on our shop talk we had, I feel you learn more from the tragic stories than you do the success stories. Because they show success stories all the time, and that's the 1 out of a million or 1 out of 1,000. It's the 1%. There are people who fail all the time, and you can learn more from people's failures and their hard times. And it goes to the movie we were talking about, Carl, which was what was the basketball movie, Carl? That was in Chicago with the 2 young boys. Hoop Dreams. Hoop Dreams. And you learn more from the kid who failed and stopped being able to chase his dream because he got to some things and he ended up having a kid at a young age, and his whole thing was shattered. And it all started with him not being able to go to a certain school to get that publicity that he needed. And I feel a lot of kids that fall into that situation now can learn from that a lot better. So, Gene, my brother, man, like, thank you, bro. Like, I know how much this probably hit you and made you have to relive something that's so traumatic to you, but you taking this opportunity to do that will help the next man tenfold. And that's a big power and respect to you for doing that. Josh, you as well. Like, you guys have dropped a lot of knowledge for these young guys who will be listening. And it's going to help them give them an eye-opening experience that moving forward, they know what to prepare themselves for. They're not going into something blind. And it's something Josh said, which was our white counterparts usually take this to go play pro, not that serious. They take it as an opportunity to go travel the world for a little bit and play some volleyball and make a little bit of money in their pockets. But at the end of the day, this ain't what I'm trying to do. But for us, we have to take it way more serious when we go overseas because our life is on the line some of the times. And that's something that not a lot of people understand. So again, thank you both for speaking and telling your truth for all of that. Carl, Rock, Pop, Nikki, as always, you guys are great and always bringing some good experience. That's what I love our legion of Motivate here. We got from 30, 29 to, I'm not going to get how far up we go, but but we got some years of experience here and a lot of different demographics too. So it's awesome to be able to give people different perspectives on a lot of things. So you guys are always great and I appreciate you. But for everybody else that's listening, we appreciate y'all listening in. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow us, share our stories to somebody you think it might benefit. And that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to educate and motivate those out there. But until next time, as always, stay great and motivate. Love you all.
Preach.